everybody. It's time for the first TBR of 2024. Can you believe it? The first TBR of 2024. It's gonna be good. It's gonna be a good reading year. I can feel it. It's still 2023. Christmas has not come yet. I'm still working. The break has not come yet. It's only 2 o'clock outside and it is very dark. But we are gonna go ahead and start thinking about 2024. I'm gonna share some plans and some goals, just what I'm looking forward to. One of my goals for 2024 is to get rid of any books that I don't think have rereadability. So one of my words for 2024 is curate. I want to curate bookshelves full of books that I love so much that I want to reread them. And I want to rehome all the other books. And then tentatively, because it's a long way off, tentatively, in 2025, I'm toying with the idea of only rereading books. We'll see how that goes. I don't enjoy watching unhaul videos. I don't watch them, so I won't be filming any, but that will be a process that is going on in my life. I have 10 bookshelves of varying sizes, and it will be an emotional thing to get rid of some of those books, to get rid of a lot of those books. But I'm gonna do it because I only wanna own books that I love and that I want to reread. And then I wanna spend time rereading them. That's what I wanna focus on. That's one of my words. Another one of my words this year is cultivate. So I want to cultivate experiences for myself that help me try new things, do new things, but also remember and bring back into my life things that I used to really love that for one reason or another have just kind of disappeared into the ether. For example, I am going to pick 4 musical artists that I haven't listened to in recent years that I used to love so much. And I'm going to dedicate time each month to reacquainting myself with 4 formerly beloved artists. I'm going to rewatch certain shows, TV shows that I consider to have been some of my all-time favorites. I'm going to take a great courses course each month. I'm going to have a focus for my third word. This cultivate leads into my third and final word for 2024. So we've had curate, cultivate, and create. So my third word is create, and I'm going to focus on a different creative endeavor each month. In January, that's going to be watercolor painting. And I've already queued up a playlist of little tutorials for little easy watercolor projects on YouTube. And I'll do 1 or 2 a week for the entire month of January. These are my goals. I want to kind of cleanse, could be another word. I want to cleanse my space of habitual things that I do. I want to refresh my interests. I want to cultivate my bookshelves and just have a slow, lovely, thoughtful, intentional, wonderful time of it. And also do a lot of reading. And I have some very specific reading plans too. 2 things that I will be working on ongoing are reading a poem a day for an entire year. I have this beautiful book of Friends, a poem for every day of the year. I have some poems tabbed because I've used them in class with my students, but I have this beautiful collection of a poem a day about friendship, edited by Jane McMorland Hunter, and I've never read even 2/3 of the poems in this book. So I'm going to read one a day. Yes. And then I'm always doing a Bible study, and this year, but I never share it on here, but I'm going to go ahead and share it because of another thing that I'll be working on that I will be sharing here. It's a 6-week Bible study, but I only do 1 lesson a day. 1 lesson a week instead of 1 lesson a day for 6 weeks. So it takes me like 42 weeks or something to do a 6-week Bible study. So I'm going to be focusing on the book of Habakkuk or however you prefer to say it, by Dana Gresh. And so I'm going to be looking at this and focusing on this each month for most of the year, for almost the entire year. So we'll put those to the side. 2 projects that will be ongoing, but that will make their way into what I'm really excited about, which is I will be keeping a commonplace journal this year. This is something that I have always wanted to try and have never done. I have always been a journaler. I've been an art journaler. I've been a word journaler, a writing journaler, like a traditional journaler. I've been a travel journaler. I've been a blogger. I've been a newsletter writer. I have always done these things, but I've never kept a commonplace journal where I gather in one place intentionally quotes and images and things that are influencing me all in one place. And my understanding of a commonplace journal, which I've known about long before I knew about YouTube or whatever. I've known about commonplace journals since the 1980s. My understanding of the commonplace journal is that it is like your own personal encyclopedia. I'm going to keep a commonplace journal focused on all of the things that I'm reading and watching and listening to and seeing and doing and learning and teaching. I'm going to have it all there in one place, and part of it will be art and part of it will be writing and part of it will be collating quotes and information and part of it will be lists, and it's going to be all in one place. One journal. Things like my Bible study, my poem a day, will end up in that. And I do think that it will be insightful and interesting. Like in January, I'll put my watercolor paintings in there too. Like I do think that it's going to be very insightful and interesting. And I'm curious to see what kinds of things my brain decides to focus on and find connections with in all the things that I'm doing this year and thinking about, because I'm hoping that it will help me answer a couple of big questions. One big question I'm hoping that all of this will help me answer in 2024 is, what am I writing about? Fiction-wise, what am I writing about? Another question I want it to help me answer is, what is my 5-year plan? Just can't figure out what's next. So I'm hoping that this might help me as well if I am curating, cultivating, and creating. Maybe it will help me also focus on something or discover something that I may not be seeing. And so with those 2 questions in mind, I'm gonna be not trying to consciously answer them, but just putting stuff into this, collecting, and then looking back every other month and sharing with you every other month what's in my commonplace book and what is it telling me. I'm excited about that. I don't know if you are, but I am. And so, yeah, well, I've got some reading goals. This is probably what you're really here for, is reading goals. So let's talk about those. I will be leading a book group online over on Fable. If you want to go back through other videos, I'll try to remember to post a link to the announcement video for Bean's Big Book Bash 2024. The first book that I will be reading and vlogging my reading of for the year is The Dawn of Everything, A New History of Humanity by David Graeber and David Wingrove. This, I assume, is a new history of humanity, just like it says. So I will be reading this and vlogging my experience of reading it, and also commonplace booking it. And along with that, I have a second project, which if anybody would like to join me, I'd be more than happy to have you, but I don't have any plans to do this with anybody at the moment. But each month I'm gonna go back and forth between 2 giant collections of short stories by 2 masters of short story writing. One is William Faulkner and the other is Jorge Borges. I don't think I say his name correctly, but we know who I mean. So in January, I'll start with William Faulkner. This particular collection happens to be already broken into 6 parts. So didn't even have to think about what I would be reading. I will be reading the first part, The Country. So barn raising, which I'm familiar with from college. Shingles for the Lord, The Tall Men, A Bear Hunt, which I'm familiar with from my master's degree, 2 Soldiers, and Shall Not Perish. will be my first set of short stories by Faulkner. I'd also like to do some rereading. So in the month of January, I'm going to reread my favorite book. I love this book. I'm going to reread Jane Eyre. Love Jane Eyre. I want to reread all of my standalone Sophie Kinsella's. So I'm going to reread Remember Me by Sophie Kinsella. This one is I think I've only ever read this one once, actually. So it says, when 28-year-old Lexi Smart wakes up in a London hospital, she's in for a big surprise. Her teeth are perfect, her body is toned, her handbag is Vuitton. Having survived a car accident in a Mercedes, no less, Lexi has lost a big chunk of her memory, 3 years to be exact, and she's about to find out just how much things have changed. Somehow, Lexi went from a 25-year-old working girl to a corporate big shot with a sleek new loft, a personal assistant, a carb-free diet, and a set of glamorous new friends. And who is this gorgeous husband who also happens to be a multimillionaire? With her mind still stuck 3 years in reverse, Lexi greets this brave new world, determined to be the person she, well, seems to be. That is, until an adorably disheveled architect drops the biggest bombshell of all. Suddenly, Lexi is scrambling to catch her balance. Her new life, it turns out, comes complete with secrets, schemes, and intrigue. How on earth did all this happen? Will she ever remember? And what will happen when she does? I love Sophie Kinsella. She makes me laugh. And I look forward, she usually releases a new book every year, and I look forward to that new book every single year. I'm also planning on reading each month a classic that I've never read before, and I've tried to pick mostly ancient classics. This first one is not an ancient classic, but it is old. It is The Book of Marjorie Kemp, a new translation by Anthony Bale. So this is kind of a memoir of a woman named Marjorie Kemp. It says it's the extraordinary account of a medieval wife, mother, and mystic. Known as the earliest autobiography written in the English language, Kemp's book describes the dramatic transformation of its heroine from failed businesswoman and lustful young wife to devout and chaste pilgrim. She vividly describes her prayers and visions, as well as the temptations in daily life to which she succumbed before dedicating herself to her spiritual calling. She traveled to the most holy sites of the medieval world, including Rome and Jerusalem. So I'm excited to read this and to hear a medieval woman's voice. I love a good mystic. So I'm actually super excited to read this. That will be my first old classic. And then I've also pulled 3 books off of my unread shelf that I really don't feel like reading, but that I'm going to read. And I'm doing that every single month in 2024. 3 books that I kind of feel like I don't want to read, but that I don't want to get rid of, and I'm going to make myself read them. So I've picked A Degree of Mastery, A Journey Through Book Art's Apprenticeship by Annie Tremel Wilcox. And this is just about a woman's journey in learning how to find books. So it could be glorious or it could be awful. I don't know. This one just makes me sad, and I do want to read it, but also I was reading it while I win my dog, not my current dog who's snuggling all the books by the Christmas tree, but my former dog, Joey Dog. When he was passing away, this was the book that I was in the middle of reading, and it happens to be a book of poems about loss, and it is called The Hurting Kind by Ada Limon, and I think that they're fantabulous, but it makes me a little bit melancholy to think of reading these, but I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna do it. And then my third book that I've pulled from my shelf is kind of a Christian self-help. The Life You Long For, Learning to Live from a Heart of Rest by Christy Nockels. I don't even know how long I've had this on my shelf, but I'm finally going to get to it. There's probably a lot of wisdom in here. We'll see how I get on with that. I don't feel like picking it up, which is exactly why I'm picking it up. So we'll see how it goes. And then I also plan on reading, I've gotten my NetGalley under control, and I have a few books for the first 3 months of the year that I would like to read, and I'm going to try and get one arc each month that I really actually want to read instead of just requesting all the things I think they'll give me. I'm really just going to request books that I would actually like to read. And so in the month of January on my Kindle, I will be reading All Our Yesterdays, a novel of Lady Macbeth by Joel H. Morris. And I don't know anything else about this. I only know that it's a novel of Lady Macbeth. So I'm very interested in that and that alone. And I'm excited to give this a shot. I think this comes out in March of 2024, but I'll double check that. I know it doesn't come out in January, but I'll double check when it's actually coming out, and I will put that on the wrap up. I'll put that date on the wrap up in January. So All Our Yesterdays. Every month you'll see a Beans Big Book Bash book. You'll see a Sophie Kinsella. You'll see 3 books I don't necessarily want to read, and a reread, and a classic. That will be the same every month. You'll also every month see a book of the month, because I'm still going to do book of the month. And in December, I got so many books. They had 2 books that I had previously done a pre-order for, but I canceled the pre-order because I could get them cheaper. They were add-ons, and I could get them cheaper at book of the month. So I grabbed those, plus I grabbed the Christmas one about the Nutcracker, which I'm reading right this very moment and loving so much. But I also grabbed this one because I thought it would be such a great book to start the year with. But there will also probably be a second book of the month book besides this one that I picked up in December. But for now, there's one book of the month book. It's Melissa Weisner's The Second Chance Year. First of all, I don't own enough books that are read. That just looks so pretty, and it looks so pretty on my shelf. This is one disastrous year, one magical wish, one chance to change the past. It says, will a chance to relive her past totally change her future? Sadie Thatcher's life has fallen apart in spectacular fashion. In one fell swoop, she managed to lose her job, her apartment, and her boyfriend, all thanks to her big mouth. So, when a fortune teller offers her one wish, Sadie jumps at the chance to redo her awful year. Deep down, she doesn't believe magic will fix her life, but taking a leap of faith, Sadie makes her wish, opens her eyes, and nothing has changed. And then, in perhaps her dumbest move yet, she kisses her brother's best friend, Jacob. When Sadie wakes up the next morning, she's in her former apartment with her former boyfriend, and her former boss is expecting her at work. Checking the date, she realizes it's January 1st of last year. As Sadie navigates her second chance year, she begins to see the red flags she missed in her relationship and in her career. Plus, she keeps running into Jacob, and she can't stop thinking about their kiss. The one he has no idea even happened. Suddenly, Sadie begins to wonder if her only mistake was wishing for a second chance. So that just sounds like the perfect kind of book. It's like a 13 going on 30 kind of time slip Dickens redo sort of a thing, Christmas Carol, set at the new year, and that sounds just like my thing. I've also got a couple of nonfictions that I would like to read. Last year I started the year with a book very similar to this one. It was about the Big Bang Theory. This year I'm going to start the year with a book very similar to that. This is How to Save a Life, The Inside Story of Grey's Anatomy by Lynette Rice. This is exactly what it says it is, the inside story of Grey's Anatomy, told through a series of interviews that are woven together into a narrative. And I really loved that style of reporting and reminiscing about Big Bang Theory, and I'm gonna love it about Grey's Anatomy as well. And then I'm also gonna read this biography of Margaret Fuller. I love the Transcendentalists, the American Transcendentalists. Those people, you've heard of most of them, I'm sure, even if you've never read anything by them. We're talking Henry David Thoreau, Bronson Alcott, kind of on the sidelines, Nathaniel Hawthorne. Emily Dickinson was influenced, Louisa May Alcott, Ralph Waldo Emerson. You know these names, even if you don't know these people. But just as important, just as influential, just as front lines was Margaret Fuller. And you don't know about her, most likely. So this is her biography, and it says that it was a Pulitzer Prize finalist, or at least the author was. Megan Marshall recounts the trailblazing life of Margaret Fuller, Thoreau's first editor, Emerson's close friend, daring war correspondent, tragic heroine. After her untimely death in a shipwreck off Fire Island, the sense and passion of her life's work were eclipsed by scandal. Marshall's inspired narrative brings her back to indelible life. And then I have some just random books that I would like to read. I picked up Kieran Millwood Hargrave's The Dance Tree. This is fiction by a great fiction writer. She wrote The Mercies. Loved that book. And this one is about the dancing plague in the 1500s. So curious to read her take on that. A friend on BookTube suggested this book to me last year, I think last January, and it took me a long time to pick up a copy of it, but I did finally. I do really enjoy this author, but I've only read their Detective Brody series, Case Histories, those books. I've never read a standalone historical fiction by this author. This is Kate Atkinson's Shrines of Gaiety. This is 1920s flapper London. I picked up a book by this author. I've wanted to read something by this author for a really long time, and this one just happens to also be, the one I picked up happens to also be of unique interest to me because I just finished reading a nonfiction, or part of a book that is nonfiction. How do I want to say this? A nonfiction book in which part of that book focuses on this disaster. So the San Francisco earthquake. This is Suzanne Meisner's The Nature of Fragile Things. And from my understanding, it takes place during the San Francisco earthquake in the early 1900s. And I just finished reading in November Rebecca Solnit's Paradise Built in Hell. And the whole first part of that focuses on a nonfiction recounting of that event and how people responded to it and helped each other through it. And so was really excited when I realized that the Susan Meisner that I will be starting my Susan Meisner journey with happens to also be about that event, which really captured my imagination. I'm going to be reading the second book in the Witch Haven series. This is The Witch Hunt by Sasha Payton Smith. In October, I read Witch Hunt and really loved it. That's the one that I can't shut up about the last 3 months. It is about the young woman who commits a murder but doesn't know how she committed that murder. And then as the police are questioning her, she gets scooped up by 2 women who tell her she has tuberculosis and she has to go to an asylum. But in reality, it's a school for witch training, for witchcraft. And she's also trying to solve the murder of her brother. That book left me on a huge cliffhanger. As soon as I had finished it, I ordered the second book in the series, The Witch Hunt. It's much shorter than The Witch Haven, which makes me sad. I don't know if this is the end of The Witch Hunt, if it's just a duology, or if there will be another book following, but I will read anything that Sasha Payton Smith wants to put out into the world because that is a YA author, a rare entity for me that I really, really love. I am going to reread The Hobbit in January. I haven't reread The Hobbit ever. I've read it once, and I read it on a train in Africa in the summer in Mali. So I am really excited to reread The Hobbit. I really love The Hobbit. Not such a huge fan of The Lord of the Rings. Don't come at me. I'm just not. But I really love The Hobbit. So I'm excited to read that, and then I'll probably rewatch that old 1970s, 1980s cartoon version of The Hobbit. That I grew up on that, and it's high up on my list of glorious things. I started a series in November, the Hope Harbor series by Irene Hannon. So I'm going to pick up the second book in the Hope Harbor series. This is Sea Rose Lane. These are Christian romance novels that take place on the West Coast, specifically the Pacific Northwest. Hope Harbor is located in Oregon, I imagine it's kind of like Cannon Beach, especially when I see the rock formations here. I'm going to read the next installment. I don't know what this is about, but I know that I really enjoyed the first one, and I'm sure I will enjoy the second one. Then I am going to continue on with Rayanne Thane's, what is this series? Haven Point. Hope Haven and Haven Point. I'm going to continue on with these. I'm reading the first book in the Haven Point series right now in December. I haven't started it yet. It's on the shelf over there waiting, but it will be read in December, and I'm sure I'm going to love it because I've already read the first chapter just to make sure. So I'm going to pick up the second book, which is Redemption Bay, and I have no idea what's going to happen in this one either, but I know that it's going to be just a clean, lighthearted love story, probably a little bit of drama, and it will be a nice light read. I have a lot of heavy reads planned in addition to these beautiful light reads. I'm also going to read this romance. Ruby Spencer is spending 1 year living in a small cottage in a tiny town in the Scottish Highlands for 3 reasons: to write a best-selling cookbook, to drink a barrel full of whiskey, and to figure out what comes next. It's hard to know what to expect after an impulse decision based on a map of Scotland in her Manhattan apartment, but she knows it's high time she's had an adventure. The moment she sets foot in Thistlecross, I love that name. The moment she sets foot in Thistlecross, the verdant scenery, cozy cottages, and struggling local pubs steal her heart. Between designing pop-up suppers and conversing with the colorful locals, Ruby starts to see a future that stretches beyond her year of adventure. It doesn't hurt that Brochen, the ruggedly handsome local handyman, keeps coming around to repair things at the cottage. As Ruby grows closer to Brochen and the tightly held traditions of the charming village, she discovers secret plans to turn her beloved pub into an American chain restaurant. Faced with an impossible choice, Ruby must decide between love, loyalty, and the Highland way of life. So, that sounds fun. And then I've got a mystery that I'm going to try. I may really get into the series. I don't know. We'll see. I don't know if there are more books in the series yet, but I think there are. This is Marian Lane and the Midnight Murder. This takes place in the 1950s, and it says, they were a band of mysterious private detectives whose underground hideout no one had ever found. London, 1958. Hidden deep beneath the city streets lies the world of Miss Brickett's, a secret detective agency. From traversing deceptive escape rooms to engineering almost magical mechanical gadgets, apprentice detectives at Miss Brickett's undergo rigorous training to equip them with the skills they will need to solve the mysteries that confound London's police force. But nothing can prepare 23-year-old apprentice Marian Lane for what happens when her mentor, Frank, is arrested on suspicion of murder and tasks Marian with clearing his name and saving his life. Her investigation will place Marian and her friends in great peril as they venture into the forbidden maze of uncharted tunnels that surround Miss Brickett's. Being discovered out of bounds means immediate dismissal, but that is the least of Marian's problems. That just sounds so fun. So fun. And then finally, I want to read this whole series this year. This summer, I stumbled upon the BBC television show from the 90s, and watched every episode in a very short amount of time, absolutely fell in love with it, and immediately went on Better World Books and found myself a copy of every single one of the books in the series. There are 5. So for 5 months this year, I will be spending time in Elizabeth Jane Howard's world that she created, the Cazalet Chronicles. With the first book, The Light Years, I will start that journey. I'm really, really excited about this. I almost did this. I almost started it right when I got the books, but I was like, no, this would be good. It would be good to have a series that I'm super looking forward to in 2024. So it says, every summer, brothers Hugh, Edward, and Rupert Cazalet take their wives and children back to their childhood home in the heart of Sussex countryside. There they join their formidable parents and unmarried sister Rachel for 2 months of glorious sunlit days full of childish games and picnics on the beach. But not even this idyllic setting can alleviate heartache, fear, and loneliness. Hugh, haunted by memories of battle in France, is terrified at the prospect of another war. Handsome, charming Edward, who escaped the war unscathed, is more concerned with matters close at hand, but his wife, Villy, desperately bored after her life as a dancer, is unaware of his continuous infidelities. Rupert, the talented painter, finds that he cannot both paint and be married to his beautiful and demanding wife Zoe, and Rachel is so loyal to her family that she has no time to devote to Sid, the woman she feels so passionately about. This chronicle will read like Trollope, as a classic about life in England in our century, says Sybil Bedford. I don't know who Sybil Bedford is, but I hope it doesn't read like Trollope. If I hadn't already watched the television show, that would have turned me off of this series. I am really, really looking forward to this. I actually, before I purchased the books, I listened to the sample, like the 10-minute sample on Audible of the first book, just to kind of get a feel for how the writing would be. And it starts out by telling you the story through the view of the people who, like the housekeeper, the people who work in the house, as they start to prepare the house for the Cazalet family to come. That is totally different from the television series. And so I think it's going to be so familiar, but at the same time, it's going to be so different. And I know that the television series does not tell the whole story that the books tells. It stops. It didn't get renewed for another season. So it stops at a fine time to stop for a story, but at the same time, you know, there's so much more, and I know there's so much more in these books. So I'm super excited about that. And that's my TBR and my goals for January. I plan on having a great year, and I plan on really focusing on things that stretch me and things that I can curl up into in equal measure this year in 2024. Good reading plans. I really carefully picked everything that I'll be reading this year. Of course, there are always surprises. There are always books that are being released. There are always things that I will discover and find that will, throw things off just a little bit. But I know that I have a really strong foundation this year for what I'm going to read. I also don't think that I am overtaxing myself with plans. There's some wiggle room in here for me. I'm also going to be doing other things like watercolor painting and watching a great courses course. My first one in January, my great courses course in January is going to be The Meaning of Life. Thought that was a good place to start. I'm going to be doing all this commonplace journaling, and I'm also going to try to post one video a week this year. I've never done that. In the years that I've been on BookTube, I've generally posted twice a month. Sometimes more. I'm gonna try and post once a week. We'll see how it goes. If I don't do it, I don't do it. I have a plan, and I think it's doable, and I think I'd like to do it. I think I would. So we'll see how it goes. We'll see how it goes. What are your plans? What are you reading? Does any of this look good? Would you like to join me for Bean's Big Book Bash? Let me know. In the meantime, happy holidays to you, and let's go read.